Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, how are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new Fallout 76 video. So today we're going to go over my loadout, my build, my gear and all that stuff, seeing as a few people have asked. So we're going to try and keep this on point and go through, well, pretty much everything. Perks, weapons, armour, the whole 9 yards. Just a quick FYI before we go any further, I'm not looking for any input on this. I don't particularly want to chase extra damage. I think that's kind of balmy actually in this game. And I'm very, very happy with the loadouts. They do what I need them to, and I'm not bothered about what anybody else thinks about it. So there's your FYI before you jump in and tell me I'm doing it wrong. So, let's have a look at this stuff. Right in. First up, let's have a little gander at my perks. So, I have 4 loadouts here, 3 main and this one over here. This one is the one I chop and change when I want to do something different, usually something different than my commando loadout. So you can kind of ignore this for right now. It's just to say it's the one I mix up so that I don't have to change the other ones and try and remember what they are when I come back. So, Commando, first up, this is the one I use for just running and gunning and taking out relatively low-level enemies, sort of the general gameplay stuff. If I'm going into endgame content, like bosses or Scorchbeast Queen or any of the nuke-based bosses, or I'm doing daily ops, or I'm doing expeditions, anything that's group-centric that I'm then going to solo, because I'm antisocial like that, then I'll come down, I use this absolute unit heavy gunner build. We'll have a look at that in a minute. And this is my crafting loadout. 3 guesses what I use that for. Primarily for camp building, but also for crafting ammo as well. It's quite useful for that. So, we'll start with the commando loadout. Go away, pop up. Before I get into all of this, I'm going to talk legendary perks, because this doesn't change. So, obviously, this doesn't get maxed out until level 300 plus. In this case, I've got all of the perks unlocked. I've got everything I use maxed out, so we are at a kind of constant level here, but this won't be achieved until level 300 onwards if you're working towards it. So here's the first one, Ammo Factory. This one, in my opinion, is an absolute must. I use quite a bit of ammo, so being able to craft more for less resources is an absolute must. This one's going nowhere. Legendary Luck, and also next to it, Legendary Charisma. These just boost the number of special points I have available for these 2 stats. That gives me more than enough points. I've got spare special points at this stage, so that's plenty. There are other things I could theoretically put in there. I don't feel like I need it. I could also take more points for other areas. Don't feel like I need that either. Obviously, these will not take you over the maximum of 15 special points per attribute, so you can't be above 15 luck even if you use this. So you kind of pull it back and it frees them up to be used elsewhere, the extra sort of 5 points there. Same thing for the Charisma. So, over here we have Electric Absorption. This one is particularly useful in, well, it's only useful in power armor actually, but when you're in power armor, it's, I mean, you can kind of ignore the text down there actually, because what it does is basically make you 90% plus immune to energy damage. So, if somebody's shooting you with a laser, it's going to heal you, it's not going to do damage to you, and it will recharge your fusion cores while you're at it, so it's kind of a no-brainer really at that point. Power armor reboot. Chances are, if I'm in power armor, I'm doing tougher content, such as it is in 76 anyway, and it's probably group-centric content, and I'm probably soloing it. So occasionally I get knocked down, especially if I'm not paying enough attention to what I'm doing, and Power Armor Reboot means a little bit less hassle, because it pops me back up again every so often, so it just makes life a little bit easier, makes things a bit smoother. And over here with Follow Through, this one is basically there to boost my commando build a little bit. I don't really take advantage of this a lot because I'm not doing a lot of sneak attacks. I'm just not bothered. Occasionally I do, but not a great deal of the time. So this is kind of, I could put anything here, but I put Follow Through because it occasionally gets used. I know a lot of people are into Master Infiltrator and stuff like that. I'm of the opinion if you're going to take perks that mean you don't have to play the game, don't bother playing the game. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents on the thing. I'm not interested in that sort of perk. The rest of them. So we're going to start off with strength, work our way along. As we can see, here are my special points with, you can sort of subtract 5 from charisma and luck to get the actual real number because the legendary perks are affecting these numbers, but otherwise that gives you a very vague idea of what we're doing. Being a commando build, perception is the primary attribute. Start over here on the left. Bandolier. Ammo weighing less, always nice. And blocker, 45% less damage from melee attacks. When somebody gets up in your face, especially if you've got a longer length of weapon, like a rifle or a heavy gun, sometimes that can be a bit annoying, especially if you're reloading as well, so the damage resistance is nice. Again, I play solo the whole time, so extra damage resistance is always welcome. So we have 3 commando perks in here, Master Commando, Expert, and the regular one, each giving me 20% extra damage with my automatic rifles. Tank Killer here is going to give me extra armor penetration, and the stagger is nice, but it doesn't actually proc that often, so it's primarily there for a little bit of armor penetration. There are some particularly high armored, high resistance enemies out there, and especially when you're running solo with a build that is not necessarily geared towards being the highest possible damage output, which is really not necessary in this game anyway, but having that little bit of extra armor penetration does just make life a bit easier. Commando, expert commando. Long shots, this one is handy as well because I'm doing a lot of aiming down sights. I don't use VATS because I'm on PC and it's easier just to free aim. So having the extra bonus to the gun's accuracy is always helpful. With guns in Fallout, they have that inherent accuracy stat, so basically your bullets are going to go within a circle around the dot of your sight, as opposed to actually where the dot is. The better the accuracy, the smaller the circle. So we're reducing the size of that circle, the occasional bug notwithstanding anyway. So very, very helpful for that, and a little bit of extra range. Nobody's going to complain about that, neither. Grenadier, I like throwing grenades around and blowing stuff up, so that means I can blow a little bit more up, which is always handy. Over to Endurance, just the one perk on. I have this one perk on Endurance on every build I do, because you'd be kind of mad not to, I think. 45% less damage from explosions and flame attacks. Particularly as I throw grenades around, but any kind of explosives in general are pretty damaging in 76 at times, and Fireproof massively mitigates that. It makes a humongous difference. Strongly recommend. Not too bothered about any of the other perks, depending on your build. Some endurance perks are worthwhile, but for me, this is the one that everybody needs. Charisma, so Lone Wanderer, because as previously mentioned, I am antisocial. Travel Agent, because I don't like paying for caps when I fast travel, but it does make a great deal of difference, so you could swap that out or remove it if you wanted to, but, you know, I'm stingy about things that aren't worth paying for, and I don't feel like fast travel is something I should have to pay for. On the other hand, 5.5 years in, that's probably a bit late for worrying about that. Tenderizer, so this one's here basically because I had, as I said earlier, some spare special points available, so I didn't really know where to put them. Can't put them in Perception because that's already maxed out. I don't really need them anywhere else, so I put it into Charisma and grabbed Tenderizer so I do a little bit of extra damage, because soloing and just running around, it just makes things, particularly against tougher enemies, like super mutant stuff like that, their damage resistance gets a little bit more mitigated in that way. Demolitions Expert, so my grenades go boom in a bigger way, because I like throwing grenades, particularly nuka grenades, I do love those things. And Gunsmith, repairing your guns every 5 minutes is a drag. This means you have to repair them every 10 minutes instead, so, you know, seems like a worthwhile thing. Agility, my perks on here are something of a nice-to-have quality of life choices rather than major gameplay changing things. Got Action Boy, I don't use VATS, so I kind of don't need action points except for when I'm sprinting, and I'm of the opinion that in this case, action points should not be affected by sprinting. If I'm not using VATS, I don't want anything to do with action points. They slow me down and they annoy the crap out of me, so this is some way of offsetting that. Personally, I'd yank them all together. Stamina systems do not make games better in any case, ever. There is no debate on this. Range attacks doing extra sneak damage. Again, this is just situational. Very occasionally I will do sneak attacks, but generally not that often. But if I do, hey, it's a little bit of extra damage. So, White Knight. As with Gunsmith, repairing things every 5 minutes is very annoying. I was repairing my armour a lot until somebody pointed out that White Knight existed, and I immediately jumped on that, and it has massively reduced the amount of time I have to spend repairing armour, which is very, very, very nice and very appreciated, so definitely recommend that one. Adrenaline, again, this is one I have because I had spare special points. It's a little bit of extra free damage as you kill enemies. When you're being attacked by whole groups, boosting your damage output as you start taking them down is not such a bad thing. It increases survivability in a way as well, but as I say, I had a couple of spare perk points, so that's kind of why that's there. So, Dodgy. This one is here basically because damage resistance is nice. Losing action points when you get hit is irritating, to be honest, but the damage resistance and increased survivability when you are an antisocial individual like me is nice to have, so definitely not such a bad thing there. Now, over on luck, this doesn't change much from build to build, because I have Bloody Mess on, because it's kind of always worth having. It's a flat 15% damage bonus no matter what you're doing, so that's just nice to have. Tormentor, this one does change out, depending on what weapons I'm using. In this case, this means I have chance of crippling limb for rifle attacks, so no-brainer, I have that one. Class Freak is basically going to reduce the negative impact of my mutations. If you have mutations, you should have Class Freak. As, like Fireproof, it's one you should always have, in my opinion. Starch genes, this is particularly useful to make sure you don't accidentally cure the mutations you worked so hard to get. So in that regards, this is another one you absolutely must have. So I would say, whatever your build is, 11 is where you should be on luck minimum, because it's always going to be useful to you. There might be one or two exceptions regarding the damage perks like Tormentor, but on the whole, everything here is an absolute must. So there we go, that's my Commando build. Absolute unit, this one is my heavy gunner, and there's a bit of overlap here, so you see, fireproof, and my luck perks, they are basically the same. The one difference is instead of Tormentor, I have one gun army over here, which gives you stagger and limb crippling chance for heavy guns instead of the equivalent for rifles, because, you know, I'm using a heavy gun. This is an ultrasight Gatling laser I use for this, and it's good fun. I really like it. Not the most efficient heavy gun out there. There are a couple of little drawbacks. Obviously, damage output, kind of don't care. This game's not that difficult anyway. And the farming up of flux to keep yourself in stock with ammo can be a bit of a drag at times, but it doesn't come up that often. It's violet flux. It's one of the easy ones to get, so that's quite cool. So the big changes, obviously, we shift from perception to strength and a little bit more on the intelligence as well for our energy weapons. So blocker is here again. It's only 2 out of 3 in this case because I needed an extra point. But it, reduces melee damage, which is nice. The point I took off went here, into Pain Train. So in Daily Ops, and also in mutated events when those come up as well, you get enemies that have, amongst many other mutations, they have the Resilient mutation. That means you can't kill them with anything other than melee damage. For this build, that meant I was doing a lot of bashing, and it's slow, and the fact it counts for some absurd reason as a power attack, despite being really underpowered, is very, very irritating when you're trying to bash enemies, especially in Daily Ops where you're against the clock. So with Pain Train, I can run into them and take them down much quicker and with a lot less faff and a lot less delay between the impacts, so I like it for that. It's a very, very situational thing, but it's 1 point out of my blocker list. That's just not really a big deal, so it makes a big difference for me in that way. Lock and load. Reloading heavy guns faster is definitely worthwhile because they take a while. Another good option here, if you want to consider it, is either bare arms or bullet shield, because you can boost your damage resistance or reduce the weight of heavy guns. That's quite a nice one. But you're going to have your strength maxed out anyway, probably, for a heavy gun build, so maybe not a top priority. So lock and load is the one that I would choose personally, but the other two, you're going to have to pick and choose between them because there just aren't enough slots for all of them, so that's where I'm at. So we have Expert Heavy Gunner, Regular Heavy Gunner, Master Heavy Gunner, not necessarily in that order, each giving me another 20% damage as well. Green Thumb is over here on Perception, as I can't go any lower than 1, so I have this here primarily because when I'm harvesting raw flux, in order to keep my Gatling laser in ammo, I can harvest twice as much using this, so it's very handy for that. Another good option would be to swap it out for the Grenadier perk, so that I get a larger grenade explosion range. But my grenades are way down on the priority list on this build. It's all about my Gatling laser, so I could change it if I felt like it, or I can leave it on there if I'm feeling lazy. It's fine. Fireproof, we talked about that. Lone Wanderer is the same, Travel Agent is the same as before, Tenderizer is the same as before, and because, again, I had spare perks floating around, I've got Field Surgeon over here, so that my stim packs work a little bit more quickly, because this build, as I say, is the one I use for group-based content, and the content where I'm likely to encounter the highest damage output, so being able to heal a little faster is definitely welcome. Intelligence, so Gunsmith as before, because my Gatling laser, even with this on, breaks a lot. It's a fast-firing weapon, and every shot you fire does a little bit of condition damage, so it tends to shake itself to pieces, and it would shake itself to pieces a lot faster without this. Power user, fusion core duration being doubled is nice for power armor, but not really massively noticeable. For Gatling lasers, it means each fusion core has twice as much ammo in it, and that really is noticeable, so that's kind of a must if you're going to use Gatling lasers. Stabilized, having your heavy weapon not bounce around so much is great, because they do tend to spray a lot and not be that precise, but when you combine this with a laser weapon, like a Gatling laser, it becomes, well, funnily enough, a laser. It's really, really accurate and great, and I do like it for that. Extra explosive damage. Again, this is more of a, I've got a slot to put in here, so I kind of choose it for that. I could take it out and buff my Gatling laser damage a little bit further if I wanted to, but it's not a great deal of difference, a little 10% buff. For example, I have done that once already here with the Science Expert, and we're getting 10% energy damage buff here as well. Not really a great deal of changes on the agility. We've got Action Boy again, White Knight, Adrenaline, and Dodgy. This is all pretty much exactly the same. Again, they're kind of throwaway quality of life things, apart from the losing action points when you get hit thing. That's not particularly quality of life. But there we go. That is my heavy guns build. Not the highest possible output. You don't really need the highest possible damage output in this game anyway, and it's good fun. So I like it for that. Crafting. Now this one is pretty much what you would imagine. It's the one I use when I'm building camps, crafting up ammo, repairing weapons, or harvesting or particularly wood. I've got a few points over here in the gunner stuff, just because occasionally I forget to take this off and go back to a combat build, and being able to at least kind of defend myself long enough to go and fix that problem is helpful. Also, occasionally you get jumped when you're building your camp, so not often anymore, but occasionally you do, so being able to whack irritating enemies that come in and attack you is not such a bad thing. Butcher's Bounty, I'm currently a carnivore, so I use this for cooking up meat, but again, I don't use that one very much. Picklock is here because occasionally it's useful. I had a spare slot to throw in there. I could kind of throw anything in, doesn't really matter too much. Fireproof is on everything. Here, Happy Camper is the interesting one, so that my hunger and thirst meters go down, technically. Slower, but at the same time, it's kind of more practical if I didn't have this, because when they're fully empty, there's no real loss to me from that, and I use this loadout when I'm making videos, so not having the notifications go off or have them out of the way quicker is perhaps not such a bad thing. But there it is nonetheless. Intelligence is really the more interesting one. I've got a heavy gunner on here, so I have power user for that reason. Demolitions Expert, again, I kind of always have one of them. Chemist is useful because I craft a decent amount of Psycho buff. There's on occasion that little bit of damage output increase, particularly when you're against the clock in daily ops, stuff like that, is quite handy to have. So for that reason, I craft a decent amount of Psycho buff, and that means I can get 2 for 1, basically. Weapon Artisan, this is the loadout I use for repairing weapons, so that means I can repair them further. Crafting workshop items, so I can build camps with a lower material cost, is always nice. And fixing armour is always good as well, same as Weapon Artisan. This lot over here, exactly the same as they were before. The big difference here is home defense. This one I have for building turrets and traps. I don't build a lot of turrets. The one I build the most is the flamethrower trap, because I use it as a building technique to destroy bits of the camp so that I can set things closer together. I'll link around the appropriate video for that if you want to know more about it. But to craft that flamethrower trap, firstly you need the plan, which comes from your initial arrival as part of the main storyline in the mire. Your first stop in the mire when you get there will give you that plan. And you combine that with home defense and fireproof in order to craft that turret, which is very handy, so that's why those are there. And Ammo Smith, this is the loadout I use for crafting ammo, so when I combine 80% more rounds when crafting ammo here with 150% more on the legendary perk, I get a lot of ammo for very, very low cost, which is great. Over here, where have you gone? Class Freak, Starch Jeans, those are obligatory. One gun army, I'm on a heavy gunner build. Super duper, this is the real crafting point. It means every so often you get double your production rate for whatever it is you're making, be that ammo or cooking food. It's not particularly useful to me for crafting fusion cores for my ultrasight Gatling laser. It does proc for that occasionally. Not very often though, because I tend to only craft one batch at a time. When it does proc, I've then got to carry around heavy fusion cores, so it's a mixed blessing there, but the rest of the time, it's really handy to have. And woodchucker, if I go out and collect a load of wood, which I do use a lot of because I do a lot of camp building, that is very, very helpful to have. So, let's have a look at some of my gear. Over here on the weapons, this is my favourite gun. This is my handmade rifle. It has anti-armour and explosive on it. We also have the agility legendary effect, but not too bothered about that. So this thing is quite nice, does a decent amount of damage output, and I have a lot of fun playing the commando build with this one. My favourite skin for this is actually the communist skin. It's kind of green, which is great. And also it's got the vibe of the handmade rifle from Fallout 3, which I love. However, I've got this skin on at the moment, the light 'em up paint, because although skins should not make the slightest difference to the performance of your weapon, this one does. I hope Bethesda don't notice, because I don't want it changing. But some of the other skins, the ADS time is a lot slower, it takes a lot longer for the gun to come from the hipfire position up to the aiming position when you look through the reflex scope. In the case of the light 'em up paint, it comes up faster for some reason. Now, this could be in my head, it could be a bit of a placebo thing, but I'm fairly convinced it's not. It feels noticeably different, so that's why I've got the skin on, because it feels good. I don't actually like the look that much. Kind of rusted bare metal thing, I'm kind of cool with that, and the weird stock on it. But the neon tubes on it, I kind of could live without those, the rest of it I do like. But either way, it's because the ADS time seems to be quicker with this, so that's why that's there. Lizzie's adopted son is my ultrasight Gatling laser. Originally I had one called Lizzie's Revenge after Elizabeth Taggarty of the Brotherhood of Steel. But that one disappeared when I fast travelled. I mean, literally, I fast travelled from one place to another and it vanished. And I have not replaced it with anything better yet than this. I'm hoping to, because that original one was on anti-armour and faster fire rate, which I would like back. This one, it's all about the anti-armour. The other stuff, damage resistance while reloading's not bad. Action points on kill, I don't use VATs, so, you know, it's not very helpful at all. But the armour penetration is good. It's still a damn good gun, this ultrasight Gatling laser, and I like it a lot. But hopefully we'll be able to upgrade it to something a little bit more useful on the 2nd and 3rd stars at some point. I do quite like the poker paint as well. I've only got this, the mind paint, which is kind of a bluey grey, which is not very nice, and the base paint, which is fine, but this is quite colourful, clean, and looks good. I like this one a lot. So, let's have a look at my armour. My armour here is fairly simple. It is, as we've seen a moment ago, Brotherhood Recon armour. So you see what it looks like there. There is a helmet that matches this set. I've currently got a mining helmet on because the headlight's nice. And also because it goes with the rest of the outfit I'm wearing over this at the moment, which is Skippy's outfit, the Tinker outfit. Looks quite cool for somebody who does a lot of building. But I really like this armour primarily for its look, if I'm honest. It's one of the better armours in the game. It's up there with Secret Service armour, so it's endgame stuff. It's actually available now through Daily Ops, which is great, so you can pick it up relatively easily from that way if you want to. But it was previously available via the bullion system, and I do like it, and I primarily got it for the look. The paint job on it, by the way, is the Alaskan Winter paint that came from Season 14 last summer, as of time of recording. It's no longer available. It might reappear on the Atomic Shop at some point in the future, so keep an eye out there if you're interested, but for now, that's what this is. The Under Armour is Brotherhood Shielded, which is not the best Under Armour possible out there, but I do like it a lot, primarily for the colour, to be honest. I like that dark green and black combo. So, looking at my armour, there's a couple of things here that are interesting. I've got some bolstering stuff and I've got some Vanguard stuff. So, bolstering gives you a bonus to your resistances when your health drops. So, the more damage I take, the more likely I am to survive. So, it buys me a little bit of time when I'm in trouble and gives me a damage boost. The other stuff, not too bothered about the poison resistance. It's not a bad thing to have, but I wasn't bothered about that. And damage resistance while not moving, that is actually quite nice to have on occasion if you are doing something where you have to defend a specific location or you just stop. It's a free buff to your damage every so often, damage resistance rather, every so often, so that's not too bad at all. And we've got a jetpack on here because, you know, it's fun. My right arm here is also a bolstering one, so again, if my health drops, I get increased damage resistance. The intelligence thing is nice, but not too bothered about it. It kind of offsets one of my mutations, but I'll have a look at in a second. Weapon weights being reduced is always nice. One of the things I would recommend to look out for on armour is anything that reduces weight of stuff you're carrying around. So weapon weights, food and chems, junk, things like that. If you happen to get those, that's nice to have for sure. And the carry weight thing is deep pocketed. Over here, I would strongly recommend that on any armour, because carry weight is great, right? I've got a life saving over here on my right leg, so much like I've got Power Armor Reboot that picks me up in Power Armor, this one will occasionally stimpack me just before I die as well, so I don't have that trigger too often, but on the rare occasions it does. It's a nice little bonus, you know? Definitely don't complain about that. Not bothered about the action point regen apart from sprinting, so, I mean, it's nice then, but 5% isn't a lot for when it comes to action points, so this is what it is. I find canned coffee more useful for that. And effectiveness of Stimpaks, Radaway and Radex, again 5% is not a great deal, but I'm not going to turn my nose up at it either. Now these two pieces are quite cool. We've got food, drink and chem weights being reduced, which is always nice. Cryo resistance I kind of don't care about, but the Vanguard is the opposite of the bolstering. This one bolsters my damage resistance at higher health by the same amount, so I've got a little damage buff here. And I've got the same thing over here on this piece as well, with a perception buff and the energy damage here, which is interesting. We'll come back to that. But yeah, this basically means I get 2 armor pieces giving me a buff to my damage resistance when I'm at high health, and as my health drops, the other 2 kick in and make up the difference. So it's always just a little bit of an extra buff across the board. There's probably a bit in the middle where the transition is a bit faster, but, you know, theoretically this should be decent. And either way, I'm not bothered about re-rolling stuff on it, so I'm quite happy with this theory, and it works well for me. And the extra carry weight again from Deep Pocketed. The one fun thing here is dealing extra damage to melee attackers. This, combined with one of my mutations that we'll come to in a minute, means that particularly when weaker enemies attack me, occasionally low-level ghouls or mole rats, things like that, they'll often end up killing themselves because they trigger my reactionary damage, this thing, and my, I think it's the electrically charged mutation, which then means they end up getting taken out without me actually having to do anything, which is always mildly amusing, because they're not a problem, those creatures, they're just a bit annoying, So speaking of effects, while we're on the subject of my mutations, this is... oh, here they are. There's a whole lot affecting me at the moment, so we'll ignore most of that. But this is my mutation section. Adrenal reaction, more weapon damage at low HP, so hopefully I can get that kill in just before I get killed. Sometimes it works that way, sometimes it doesn't. Carnivore, so I'm using rad stag meat at the moment, and you cook that up, gives you a carry weight buff, and I've constantly got it on the go in my camp, so I've gone carnivore because I tend to munch on that, so might as well. It boosts the intelligence. The cost of this, particularly with the perks on that reduce the negatives, is 1 endurance and 1 strength. This is a negligible cost for a free bit of extra XP, which is not something I'm particularly worried about, but it's also nice to have if you get an intelligence-based question in dialogue, so it's good for that point of view as well. There's the electrically charged mutation that we were talking about earlier, combined with my armor, extra damage when things try and bite me usually. They usually regret it, which is fun. Healing factor, extra health regen, especially outside of combat, is just nice. It means I use a few less stim packs and I have to carry less, so it's always a win. Marsupial, this is basically obligatory as well. Carry weight's nice. The jump height is the real thing that you absolutely have to go for, right? Everybody wants that ridiculous jump height, and then feels weird when they go and play Fallout 4 and don't have it. Scaly skin is a nice one. Lose a few action points, not a big deal. But extra damage and energy resistance is nice to have as well. It means you can tank things a little bit more, especially if you're soloing. Resistance is certainly not a bad thing to consider. Speed demon, it means you can run faster, so higher hunger and thirst consumption, which would be double. It would be 100% more if I didn't have class 3 con, but it is quite nice to be able to run a little bit faster anyway. There we go, so that's my mutations. Okay, so the last thing we're going to have a look at here is my power armor. I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I'm not using here because I need to get rid of it, but we're basically on. Let's have a look at the torso here. The presidential paint on the Union power armor. So, where's the inspect button? There it is. I haven't bothered making my power armor legendary. I could craft up legendary versions of this. I've got better things to use it on. I really don't think you need legendary power armor. In fact, I would go so far as to say that it was a complete waste of time and effort to put legendary power armor in the game at all. I don't think there's any benefit from it. I don't think it's necessary. Power armor is so powerful in and of itself, especially when you look at Union power armor, that Bethesda needn't have added it at all. I don't think it added something, and time could have been better spent, in my opinion. For those reasons, I haven't bothered wasting my time or my legendary modules or cores crafting legendary power armor. I've just got it running stock with paint on it. There are some extra bits and pieces on there, but yeah, I don't feel like there's any need for me to increase it beyond that. I've chosen the Union stuff because the resistances are great on it. It's not the highest damage resistance power armor out there, but it doesn't need to be. It looks cool as. I really, really like the design of this power armor. I think it's brilliant. And the buff to carry weight and poison resistance, particularly at the time this was introduced, which is when expeditions first came in, and suddenly the amount of enemies doing poison damage shot up, are really, really nice to have. So it's not as much carry weight buff as Excavator armor has, but it's half of that. But Excavator doesn't get the poison resistance, so it's a really nice combo to have, and the damage resistance is higher than Excavator as well, so that's nice. The set bonus isn't showing up, I presume, because I'm not actually wearing it at the moment. Yeah, I do like this power armor. It looks cool and provides me with plenty of protection, and as I say, no need to waste time making it legendary. There's better things to use your legendary cores and modules on. IMO. So, there we go. That is my loadouts, my gear, my weapons, my armor, the whole shebang. I've gone back to my basic outfit. You can see how my character looks at the moment. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with those loadouts. I do occasionally tweak them. I try different things out because I like to mix things up and just play with different weapons for sake of variety. But that is the core stuff that never changes. Hope you folks found that useful. I do find these builds are sufficiently effective to allow me to be antisocial and do whatever the heck I like without having to get help for most of it, so I do really enjoy that. And as I say, the few areas where it is worth having backup are those endgame nuke bosses, but they just attract a ton of extra players anyway, so it's not an issue at all. But yeah, I hope you guys found that interesting. Hope you gave some ideas, and yeah. If there's anything in there that you enjoyed, please do drop subs and likes and things like that. Tons of guides and stuff on the channel if you are interested in that sort of thing, both for building, we've got loads of camp builds, and for sort of more general play and stuff as well, so do have a look around. We live stream Fallout 76 pretty regularly as well, so if you want to join us for those, that's always a good time to be had. We're playing through Fallout 4 again at the moment, because, well, I got hooked. So there we go. So keep an eye out for that, do join us for those as well. And we always have something else on the go as well, outside of the Bethesda Fallout realm as well, which is just, nice for a bit of variety. So if you're down for that, then do join us for those streams as well. It's Monday to Friday. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Do hit all those buttons down below, and I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.